The Golden Dawn's most notorious member was a self-confessed Satanist, Aleister Crowley, who styled himself as the Beast.
Few people realize that Aleister Crowley is not only the father of modern Satanism, but the father of modern culture as well, the wickedest man on earth. Crowley claimed that a demonic spirit he later identified as Satan himself dictated a book to him in 1904 called the Book of the Law. Under the heading The Law of Thelema, the Book of the Law declares, "This book lays down a simple code of conduct. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is a law, love under will. There is no law beyond do what thou wilt."
Crowley had already been trying to contact the devil in 1898 when he first made contact with the Order of the Golden Dawn. By 1900, Crowley was mingling with the elite of British society, sharing his knowledge of devil worship with leading Masonic politicians, aristocrats, and royalty. Crowley was a full-time occultist and had no day job in which he had to hide his fascination with Freemasonry and Satanism. In his book, Confessions, Crowley claims he was initiated into Freemasonry at the Anglo-Saxon Lodge in Paris. He also recounts how he became master of one of London's oldest and most respected lodges, the Studholme Lodge, which is now rumoured to have Tony Blair as one of its members. Crowley shared Albert Pike's enthusiasm for the devil. In his book entitled Magic, Crowley writes, "The devil is this serpent, Satan. He is life and love. He is light, and his zodiacal image is Capricornus, the leaping goat, the Godhead."
Defeated Squires of the years declare the last of the demons, the kingdom is thine to inherit. What
As we shall see, Crowley's do what thou wilt was really do what Satan or Crowley wilt. Crowley taught that one could become a genius in music through practicing his Satanism. He had hoped to get his disciples into influential positions in America to influence the masses. One such disciple was former Harvard professor turned drug guru Timothy Leary, the pagan demonic gods of the East who were also promoted by Aleister Crowley. We can see here that Timothy Leary is under a painting which bears the number of the Antichrist, 666, who is prophesied to rule the world until he's destroyed by Christ at Armageddon. On a PBS interview, Timothy Leary let his hair down and admitted that he was carrying on Satanist Aleister Crowley's work.
Well, I've been an admirer of Aleister Crowley. I think that I'm carrying on much of the work that he started over 100 years ago, and I think the 60s themselves. You know, Crowley said he was in favor of finding your own self and do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law under love. It was a very powerful statement. I'm sorry he isn't around now to appreciate the glories that he started.
Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. In the 1960s, this became do your own thing. As we have seen, this also incorporated the idea of the drug revolution, but Crowley did not stop there. He also called for a sexual revolution. If Crowley was to implement the satanic new age of Antichrist, as the easily led Crowleyan youth culture was deceived into believing that they had received spiritual enlightenment, when in fact they had swung the door open to Satan and his plan to destroy the world. Satan had effectively slipped in his destructive teachings to undermine traditional moral values through the cloak of a supposed anti-materialistic peace movement. Crowley taught that his satanic doctrine should be cloaked under the lie of love, and he believed the youth would fall for it. Crowley taught that in order for the new eon of Antichrist to be established, he had to initiate the world into homosexuality. Crowley began by implementing many of his homosexual sex magic rituals into a secret order called the OTO.
We're young, we're queer, we're gonna rule the world. We're young, we're queer, we're gonna rule the world.
You're about to see startling evidence that Crowley had as much influence on the world with his sex revolution as he did with the drug revolution. Aleister Crowley knew that if he was to establish a new age of Antichrist, he would have to destroy God's design for family, consisting of men and women as husband and wife. Crowley therefore declared in his book Magic Without Tears that family was public enemy number one. Since the Satanic Revolution of the 1960s, there's been an incredible attack on the family as homosexual recruiting has increased dramatically. Crowley made it no secret that he was interested in popularizing homosexual deviancy and even child molestation. Crowley's emphasis on homosexuality found their way into mainstream politics initially through homosexual organizer Harry Hay. This is highly significant because Harry Hay, who led the charge of the sodomy revolution in the 60s, was, like Leary, a disciple of Aleister Crowley's teachings. Project 10, which was based on the skewed statistic of sex researcher Alfred Kinsey, who claimed that 10% of the USA was gay, is still a program that is taught in public schools today as homosexuals seek to recruit among the young and impressionable. Project 10 seeks to get impressionable elementary students to explore possibly latent homosexual tendencies by lying to them and claiming that the basis of Kinsey's statistics that 10% of them are homosexuals and need to accept it. Incredibly, along with Harry Hay, the world's most renowned sex researcher Alfred Kinsey was also influenced by the works of Satanist Aleister Crowley. Playboy magazine probably did more than any other publication in the 1960s to popularize the sexual revolution. In fact, Hugh Hefner credited Kinsey and his flawed research in his first issue of Playboy. Incredibly, Robert Anton Wilson, who edited the Playboy Forum throughout much of the hippie movement, has admitted to practicing Crowley's magic and reading all of his available works. In the 1960s, homosexual youth was rallied to take to the streets. Not coincidentally, the founder of the modern homosexual movement, Crowley and Satanist Harry Hay was dubbed the oldest hippie of the 1960s. Playboy magazine probably did more than any other publication in the 1960s to popularize the sexual revolution. In fact, Hugh Hefner credited Kinsey and his flawed research in his first issue of Playboy. Incredibly, Robert Anton Wilson, who edited the Playboy forum throughout much of the hippie movement, has admitted to practicing Crowley's magic and reading all of his available work. Crowley taught that he was to be the leader of a youth army and ended up finding himself on the front cover of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album. The song states that it was 20 years ago today that Sgt. Pepper taught the band to play. The album came out in 1967. Crowley had died 20 years earlier in 1947, the year Leary claimed he passed on the baton to him to bring in the Satanic Revolution. This made Sgt. Pepper a likely reference to Aleister Crowley, the father of the new eon. John Lennon summed up the entire Beatle philosophy before his death by quoting Satanist Aleister Crowley. Lennon stated, the whole Beatle idea was to do what you want, right? Do what thou wilt. Darkness crept back into the forest of the world.
Imagine there's no country. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. No religion.
The Church of Satan has declared a total war on...
Satanist Rex Church admits that Satanists are using music as a weapon of propaganda to influence youth around the world against Christ in order to establish the Antichrist kingdom on earth. Sadly, hundreds of millions of people of all ages, but especially young people, have fallen prey to Satan's seduction through music.
Art, music, writing, effectively what we call propaganda, the dissemination of information to influence what we call iron youth.
Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan, corresponded with many different rock stars through his lifetime. He was the author of the Satanic Bible and the founder of the Church of Satan, declared, "Today's satanic bands are the vehicle of choice for millions of young people. If they encourage a study of real Satanism, I'm all for them." LaVey, who claims that, quote, "Satan has always had the best tunes," also has admitted the following, quote, "Music can inspire people to murder or violence, can inspire them to shoot a mall full of people." Elvis Presley, like no other artist before or after, had an uncanny effect on millions of his fans. You see, they had no control over the way his body responded to music, and described the transformation that took place with him on stage as though he were being possessed by some, quote, surge of electricity. Later in life, Elvis would acknowledge that the strange powers that he had wielded over his audiences were occultic powers that he'd received from the spirit world. Elvis, as a child, believed that he was being guided by the voice of his brother Jesse, who had died at birth, but later admitted that he was being used by a hierarchy of spirit beings. Elvis admitted, "I always felt an unseen hand behind me. I heard that same voice and thought it was my brother. That's what I thought. I heard this guidance, guiding me all my life. That's why I'm here and why I'm doing this. This didn't just happen. This wasn't mere happenstance." Author Gary Herman stated that Elvis, quote, recognized the devil's part in his success. Elvis's former bodyguards revealed that Elvis not only believed that he had occultic powers, but that he was a prophet and that they were his disciples. Red West declared he likes to be in control. He likes to be a God figure. For many years, with real seriousness, he called us his disciples. Red West declared with conviction that Elvis possessed some kind of special powers, something like psychic powers, he said. Elvis proved it to me again and again. Stated affluent culture by producing a car and a car radio for every middle-class home gave Elvis a base for recruiting, while a car radio in the front seat rocked young kids in the back seat were having sex to the hard rock beat. The back seat produced the sexual revolution, and the car radio was a medium for subversion. The Rolling Stones and the Beatles promoted Crowley's Satanic Revolution with their albums, Their Satanic Majesty's Request, and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. With their Satanic Majesty's Request, the Stones employed the same name for Satan as in Anger's film Lucifer Rising. On the front cover of the album, Mick Jagger is seen dressed like a warlock, and at the top of the album, Their Satanic Majesty's Request, we see the alignment of planets supposedly heralding the Crowleyan Satanic Age. What few people realize is that Their Satanic Majesty's Request was put out in conjunction with the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album to promote the new age of Satan. Both came out in 1967, both were highly psychedelic, and both were poised to take the hippie revolution further down the path of Crowley's Satanic Revolution. Both albums are also heavily adorned with Eastern mystical symbols and drugs. Both the Beatles and the Rolling Stones are wearing uniforms, and both are pictured with deadpan looks upon their faces. Notice on the front cover of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's is the statement, "Welcome the Rolling Stones." Tony Sanchez wrote in his book Up and Down with the Rolling Stones about a Beatles and Rolling Stones meeting where they talked, quote, long into the night about music and revolution and how they were going to change the world. On the front cover of the Rolling Stones album, Their Satanic Majesty's Request, a slightly veiled picture of John Lennon is seen. This same picture is also found on the inside sleeve of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album. On the Stones album, we also see a semi-camouflage picture of George Harrison of the Beatles, his head being covered with magic mushrooms, a biblically forbidden doorway to Satan called pharmakia. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album is covered with a collage of people known as the Magic Crowd. These are the faces of different people that the Beatles considered part of the mystical club. The Beatles described them as their heroes and people they looked up to. In this crowd, you find pictures of one-worlders like Karl Marx and mystics like Edgar Allan Poe and Carl Jung and Aldous Huxley, who Crowley reportedly turned on to mescaline. The Beatles also placed a picture of occultist William Burroughs, who claimed to have become demon-possessed after killing his wife on the Sgt. Pepper's album. Also making the cast was the most popular starlet of the 1960s, Jane Mansfield. Mansfield was a high priestess in Anton LaVey's Church of Satan. Mansfield admitted to using her Satanism to both seduce and gain worldwide fame. The Beatles also placed a slew of Eastern gurus on the album as they continued their assault on Christianity. And of course, as we have noted on the top left, we find a picture of none other than Aleister Crowley. Crowley declared that he would lead an army of youth in the revolution to implement the new age, and apparently the Beatles dubbed him Sgt. Pepper. Beatles and the Stones, far from being enemies in the 1960s as many believed, were in fact corroborators in the Satanic Revolution. For those who couldn't guess the name of the spirit channeled by the Rolling Stones, the Stones spell it out in this song, quote, "Just call me Lucifer." Here we see Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones bowing homage to Lucifer, the entity who empowers the Rolling Stones. Mick Jagger is also seen here revealing his tattoos of Satan. One day, when it is too late, Mick Jagger will be cursing the very Satan who is empowering him for deceiving him and leading him to hell. John Lennon couldn't have made it any clearer when speaking of the Beatles' success and stating, quote, "I sold my soul to the devil." Black Sabbath, who from the 1960s have been instrumental in turning countless of thousands of youth towards Satanism, did not leave any mystery as to whom they were serving when they titled one of their albums, "We Sold Our Soul for Rock and Roll." Black Sabbath was named after a satanic being that appeared to bass player Geezer Butler after he had already painted his house black and adorned it with upside-down crosses and depictions of Satan. This satanic being that appeared at the foot of Butler's bed is considered the fifth mystical member of Black Sabbath, who gave them the material for their first 3 albums.
We've always, within the band, said there is a fifth member, a mystical member, yeah. We've always said there's something looking over us.
And the only way that I can describe that, probably in its the best way for me, is that when we were playing our first songs together, and especially our first the first 3 albums, for instance, we would literally show up in a room, and it was almost as if the songs were already written.
Big black shape with eyes on fire.
Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden, one of heavy metal's most popular bands, admitted, quote, "We referred to things in our music like the tarot and ideas of people like Aleister Crowley. Iron Maiden sings about such Crowleyan themes as human sacrifice." Crowley taught, but the bloody sacrifice, though more dangerous, is more efficacious, and for nearly all purposes, human sacrifice is best. Led Zeppelin's leader, Jimmy Page, is also a fanatic follower of Aleister Crowley and his teachings. Page, who boasted hundreds of millions of fans, slipped in Crowley's satanic message, "Do What Thou Wilt," on their 3rd album on the run-out Matrix. Jim Morrison, frontman of the biggest American rock band of the 1960s, is yet another Satanist who was influenced by the teachings of Aleister Crowley. Here we see Jim Morrison on the front cover of the Doors album 13 over a bust of Aleister Crowley. Morrison echoed Crowley's teaching of "Do What Thou Wilt," declaring, quote, "There are no rules." Morrison stated, "I'm interested in anything about revolt, disorder, chaos, especially activity that has no meaning." Ray Manzarek, the Doors keyboard player, points out that Jim Morrison was a shaman.
Jim's contribution to music was that Jim was real. Jim was real on stage. Jim was real when he wrote his songs, when he sang his songs in the studio. He was not a performer. He was not an entertainer. He was not a showman. He was a shaman. He was possessed, man. He was possessed, man. Possessed.
I let my cheeks lie down.
AC/DC guitarist Angus Young is also admitted to being possessed. He points out that the spirits manifest while he's performing on stage. He says, quote, "By the time we're halfway through the first number, someone else is steering me. I'm just along for the ride. I become possessed when I get on stage." The rock band Queen sings about Beelzebub, a biblical name for Satan, setting a demon aside for them. Bon Jovi has admitted, "I'd kill my mother for rock and roll. I would sell my soul." In fact, Bon Jovi states, quote, "When I was a boy, the devil took me by the hand, took me from my home. I'm going down, down, down." Anton LaVey admitted that, quote, "We, speaking of the Church of Satan, have had contact with a lot of people over the years." He went on to say that, quote, "David Lee Roth, who was formerly of Van Halen, recorded an album named Yankee Rose, which was the last words in the Satanic Bible." Heavy metal's most popular group, Metallica, and a copy of Motorhead's Prince make it clear as just to whom they have given their souls.
I
Cobain, who was the front man of Nirvana before committing suicide, was Rolling Stone's Artist for the Decade in the 1990s. Kurt Cobain desecrated churches by scrawling graffiti like "God is gay" on the walls. Just before Cobain made it big, he admitted his aspirations in declaring, quote, "I will get stoned and worship Satan."
Said this about Freemasonry in this very book. He says that Freemasonry is based almost totally on the Kabbalah.
Yes.
Jewish magic.
Yes.
And many Jewish rabbis have admitted this, and they say that in all of the rituals of Freemasonry you will find the Kabbalah. Madonna may have got into it because she lacks the magic. She thinks she can get miracles from it.
Right.
She can enhance her power.
Well, she raised to the top.
Yeah, she has raised to the top by worshiping, I think, nothing but Lucifer.
Yeah.
That kiss.
The kiss.
Because in all of the Kabbalistic secret society rituals, they are based on a foundation of tantra or sexual ritual.
I'm not Jewish, and nor have I converted to Judaism. I think I'm connecting to something that predates religion.
The purpose of the band?
To create the most evilest music and to gain entrance into the seven gates of hell.
So a concert is an act of worship for you?
Exactly. It's a focal point to express my Satanism.
Do you believe in demonic possession?
Of course.
Are you possessed?
Of course.
Benton sees himself as a satanic evangelist whose goal it is to lead others to hell. He said, "I collect souls. That's what I do. If I can collect one soul, if I can convert one person to accepting evil as part of their lives," he says, "then he'd be happy." While many people are not surprised to see men like Charles Manson and Marilyn Manson associated with Crowley Satanism, many people are surprised to find out that artists like Sting, yet another of the biggest artists of all time, is influenced by Aleister Crowley. Sting says of his tarot cards, these cards were designed in the 1940s under the supervision of Aleister Crowley. They're quite stunning. Crowley was known in his lifetime as the evilest man on earth and the great beast. Sting has not only admitted being into Aleister Crowley, but has stated that Aleister Crowley's death card is his favorite card. The death card is a Grim Reaper, who is also understood to be an agent of Satan or a representative of Satan himself. thing says, my favorite tarot card is death. Oh, here it is. How strange death should be right on top. Anyhow, I find it extraordinary how strong are the feelings this card inspires in me. The Red Hot Chili Peppers, one of the most popular bands of the 1990s and into the new millennium, have also promoted homosexuality. On their album Blood Sugar, Sex Magic, they put a K at the end of Sex Magic, like Aleister Crowley. At the MTV Music Awards, the Red Hot Chili Peppers gave special thanks to their lord Satan.
First of all, I'd like to thank Satan. I'd like to thank Satan. Thanks, Satan. Satan.
In the mid-1980s, after U2 had already had a huge following, they made it quite clear as to whom they were truly following as they began to repeatedly cover the Rolling Stones' anthem of praise to Satan, Sympathy for the Devil.
Pleased to meet you. I hope you guess my name. Oh, yeah. You know I'm pleased to meet you. I hope you guess my name.
Bono, U2's lead singer, has repeatedly assumed the role of Lucifer in his music, in, for example, the Fly character, which was an allusion to Beelzebub, or the Lord of the Flies. Beelzebub is referred to in God's Word as the Prince of Demons. After employing the persona of Beelzebub, the Prince of Demons, Bono would then later employ the character of Mephisto. During the Zoo TV tour, Bono revealed the new satanic persona in Mephisto as he proudly pranced around the stage with satanic horns upon his head. Bono stated that Mephisto is an extension of his Fly persona. Demons have been possessing rock stars for the last 50 years. In his classic on demon possession, John Nevius writes that those without any prior musical talent might become competent singers under possession. He further states, quote, "It may be said in general of possessed persons that sometimes people who cannot sing are able when possessed to do so. Others who ordinarily cannot write verses when possessed compose and rhyme with ease."
Then I got into a secret society that worshipped the spirits, you see. And there was a very, very popular big band leader.
Jazz
band. Yeah. Very famous. He played a lot in Montreal, Canada, Vancouver, the big cities. The band leader says, "How do you think that I became famous the way that I am?" Well, I said, "You must have had some good luck." Well, he says, "There's no such thing as good luck." He says, "There's either some power working for you somewhere, or you don't get ahead in this world. Not in my type of occupation." He told us, he says, "Look, we worship spirits. We worship Lucifer, Lucifer and all his angels. They're just as beautiful as they did before they were cast out of heaven." He says, "There was a misunderstanding in the whole thing," he says, "among the inhabitants of the galaxies." And he says, "Our master was misunderstood, and God did not bear with him like he does with people that make mistakes today. So we're in a warfare, good against evil. And we happen to be the evil ones, but we're not that bad." He says, "I look at this business between the force of good and evil." He says, "You believe in one person believes in God, and everyone believes in Lucifer. It's like politics."
The deal was that I got 7 years in which the devil would give me anything I wanted. He'd given me wine, women, song, dope, power, you name it, I'd have it. And at the end of those 7 years, he got to kill me and take me to hell. What a deal. Anybody want to sign up? Yeah, you see, you got to understand something. The satanic doctrine here is that hell is not what we believe it is. The satanic doctrine is that hell is this incredible party.
Incredibly, instinct actually fulfills Bible prophecy by walking after their own lust and attacking Bible prophecy. Incredibly, God foretold that Israel would become a nation again and regain the city of Jerusalem as a sign of the end. This was fulfilled in 1967.
We don't need all these prophecies telling us what to say. Paranoia ain't the way to live your life from day to day. So leave your doubts and your fears behind. Don't be afraid at all, 'cause up and out of space there's no gravity to fall.
Instinct tells their impressionable fans to disregard prophecy and to follow them into a make-believe world without consequences.
In this country, their greatest enemy is you.
Raped and pillaged. I was only 5 and I was the only surviving witness. My entire village burned to the ground. He wore a serpent in his crown. Happily committed to use with vengeance, alive in his mind. War is my destiny. These orders unleashed. War is my destiny. Chaos. War is my destiny. Under a bellwing time. War is my destiny.
not talking really about backwards masking. I'm talking really about backwards messages. In fact, one way to do it, which wouldn't require demons or higher intelligences to intercede, would be just to take straight words, take 7 or 8 words in a song, and reverse them. And then when you played it backwards, you would hear those words. But when you heard it forwards, what would you hear? You'd hear something backwards. It wouldn't make sense. So when people talk about how backwards masking is done in the studio, yeah, that kind of backwards masking is done in the studio. We're talking about when you hear music and lyrics forward, and then you hear those same lyrics backwards, and it's a message forward, and those same words are a message backwards. Okay? And we're not talking about 1 or 2 words. We're not talking about something like the cat and playing it backwards and trying to get something like tack backwards and something out of the. We're talking about sometimes over 15 words straight. We're talking on Stairway to Heaven right around 30 words. Okay? And we're not only talking about that, we're talking about a song that wasn't engineered to be heard backwards, but came right from the spirit world automatically. Okay? And then we're talking about, if you wanted to make lyrics backwards on a song, you're going to mess up that song forward pretty bad, right? Well, Stairway to Heaven is the most popular song in rock and roll. So this destroys any kind of argument that comes against it. And what destroys it more is the lyric forward often has everything to do with the lyric backwards. Because it's the demonic spirits using these human beings. Do you understand that? So let's listen to it. Remember, first of all, that they were invoking Satan, that they got it from Satan, and listen to what you hear backwards. Forward. Forward it says, and your stairway lies on the whispering wind. Backwards it says, because I live with Satan. Listen carefully. Raise your hands if you heard that. Quite clear, quite obvious. There's a lot more. Backwards it says, here's to my sweet Satan. Did you hear that? Listen carefully. It says, I want to live it backwards like the Zep, whose power is Satan. Did you hear that? And it says he will give you 666.
Satanist Rex Church admits that Satanists are using music as a weapon of propaganda to influence youth around the world against Christ in order to establish the Antichrist kingdom on earth.
The Blessed Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam declared, every prophet warned his people about the Antichrist, about Dajjal, the false Messiah. And the Prophet Noah warned his people. But I say to you something that none have said before me. The Antichrist sees with one eye, his left eye. He's blind in the right eye. It looks like a bulging grape. But your Lord is not one eye. Between his eyes, on his forehead, is written the word kafir, disbeliever. And every mu'min will be able to read it. A mu'min is the one who has accepted the religion, the true religion, but has not only accepted it with the lips, but the truth has entered into the heart. The one who has faith is a mu'min. And so every mu'min will be able to read and recognize this believer. Whether that mu'min is literate or illiterate. Well, then why is it that the one who is a disbeliever cannot read? The one who has faith can read. The one who has no faith cannot read. So maybe we should send him to the eye specialist to have his eyes examined. Why can't you read? But the report comes back from the eye specialist, perfect vision, no glaucoma, no cataract. His eyes are perfect. Well, then why can't he read? even though his eyes are perfect. And why is it that the one who has faith can read and recognize kafir, disbeliever? Maybe that the one who has faith is not reading with these eyes. Do we have any other eyes beside these eyes? Do we have any other ears beside these ears? Do we have any other means of acquiring knowledge other than through sense perception and rationality? The modern godless world says no. The Quran says yes. The Quran says that the heart can see. The Quran says that the heart can hear. When faith enters into the heart, then Allah puts nur in the heart, light. And with that light the heart can see what these eyes cannot see. And so now it is plain and clear that when the one who has faith is seeing, he's seeing with more than these eyes. He's seeing with the heart. And so now it is also plain and clear that when Dajjal sees with the left eye, it symbolizes external vision. And when Dajjal is blind in the right eye, it symbolizes internal blindness. With this introduction, we understand now that when we're dealing with the subject of the Antichrist, there is a lot of symbolism involved in it. Religious symbolism, which needs to be interpreted.
Knowledge externally acquired is absolutely important. A very keen observation of events unfolding in politics, in economics, in monetary economics, the irreversible meltdown of the US dollar that we've been anticipating for years now. A keen observation and an effort to understand with the external eye events unfolding in politics and economics is absolutely important. But there is also the necessity for internal, intuitive, spiritual insight to go beyond the external word to reach its internal substance. That you cannot understand the world today unless and until you recognize that appearance and reality on all things connected with the Antichrist are opposite to each other. And unless and until you see with the internal eye in addition to the external sight, you'll be deceived and misguided. You will not be able to understand and interpret the world today. We need, therefore, an epistemology to deal with an age of awesome deception.
I bet you can be more comfortable with your period.
There's a lot to love about Toyota trucks, like the full-size...
I know there's someone out there for me. That's why I call LiveLinks.
As long as you want. IHOP, come home. Now get Comcast.
Will satisfy your hunger? Good, because now when you buy a...
How did it come to this? A world run through systems. A mechanical labyrinth. Built as a prison where the bars are invisible. It exploits our insecurities. Enriches itself on our ignorance. Suppresses our ambitions. Have our goals been diverted from achieving the infinite to supplicating for the temporary? Have we lost sense of ourselves? Is the thing we are chasing real or illusion? In Arabic, the term for Antichrist is the Dajjal, the great deceiver. The great deceiver.